Connie Steele, future of work expert and author of Building the Business of You. And Connie, you are so many things. You're an author, you're a podcast host, a leadership consultant, a career strategist, a researcher, a speaker, and all of this is in and around the future of work. And I was curious, what compels you to do this work?
Well, one thing is a path found me. It's not something that I had ever planned, or really through my own career journey of trying to understand what fit, and also this desire and passion to learn what gets people stuck, whether it's in their career, but also in the work that they do. But more importantly, how do they get unstuck? How do they break through the inertia that we all typically face? So it was this desire to just get deep into that. And so when I had started my own podcast, that was a question I wanted to answer. And through a series of interviews with people, I started to see themes and noticed an interesting trend in how people were looking at their career and how they were looking at work. Candidly, became pretty obsessed about getting to the why, because at that time, we were hearing about the nonlinearity of careers, how millennials were taking a different approach, and just a lot of other factors that were showcasing a non-traditional approach. And in light of that, I realized if I could explain that in a very logical and data-driven way, I could probably crack the nut for so many people on why they were struggling to find their fit. But at the same time, I think to some degree, I was explaining my own career journey too, to try to figure out why I really enjoyed going for breadth and constantly learning, not just focusing on depth.
Yeah. So like when you find yourself in the messy middle of this and you feel like everything you're doing is pushing uphill, what keeps you going? What's the piece that keeps you going?
Really helping people find that career life fit, because I know that's what everyone ultimately wants to strive for, because we've been really redefining our definition of success. And I can so innately connect with that, because not only have I been through it, but it's just so many people that I run to day and day. And so that opportunity to create that level of clarity for people, but also so much of this is to help the next generation. I have two boys, and I see that they will have to craft their path very differently than I did. So if I can equip people with information, resources, and tools such that it can guide them in a way that helps find that level of fit and help them reach their potential, then to me, it's the best thing that I can do.
Yeah. So this is your why. This is what drives you. That's fantastic. I'm also curious. You mentioned that this isn't a path that you found; it's a path that found you. What does that mean? And tell us how that evolved.
Well, I started my career as a marketing researcher. I started really on the quantitative side of things. As a child of Chinese immigrants, I was pushed down that path of do great in school and then get to a great university, do well there, pursue an advanced degree, and then find that job with a wonderful company, right? One that's well known, and then you just move up from there. Very, again, traditional path. But I didn't realize that wasn't always the best fit. I learned a lot and it was wonderful, but I always felt that I needed to explore more. And so it was my own journey where I didn't have folks to talk to. I didn't have other mentors directly, and I learned to acquire them along the way, but I was testing and learning myself. And it was one where I was pursuing that path of moving up that ladder, like so many. So you pick that path. I was still experimenting because I wasn't sure. I switched from market research to marketing because I realized I was very right brain. But I still was trying to figure out, well, okay, I think the path is still moving up the ladder to be a marketing executive. What I want to be is in that C-suite. But when I hit that, I realized the environment wasn't right for me. The situation where I had two young kids and just sort of the stress and the pressure and so forth, which so many women have been dealing with during the Great Resignation, where you found so many executive women have decided to leave the workforce or pursue something different because managing all that was challenging. All of that made me realize, wait, what I thought I wanted again, that upward linear path to a certain level wasn't how I realized I wanted to define success, because it didn't feel right. And so, I chose to make a pivot to try to find that career life fit, as I like to call it, because I realized that I couldn't be the parent and mom and sort of partner and so forth to my family that I want to be. I didn't want to trade that off.
Yeah.
So, and during that time, this was almost a decade ago, I had a fully remote team. So I was dealing with remote before remote was a thing. I had a long commute. And so all of these stressors and pressures and so forth, I can intimately understand why people have been wanting to look at their relationship with work differently. And so it put me on a different path. And it's this one where I wanted to still learn, grow, apply my skills, grow those to open up opportunity.
Yeah. What's interesting. Oh, yeah. No, we had another interview in which we were interviewing someone who talked about pivoting, and the concept of pivoting is that you do keep some things. A pivot is you keeping some things solid and keeping them where they are, and maintaining those. And I'm really curious about, you got an undergirding in market research with your career, and that's I always wish that I started my marketing career in research. How have you benefited, and how have your pursuits benefited because of that undergirding that you got in research?
It's always about understanding the why behind the what. So there is this level of curiosity that continues whoever I meet, whatever I work on, because it's about understanding the broader context of what's happening. And when you can see the whole picture and it's about asking the right questions to get to the whole picture, then you inevitably become more effective in understanding how to solve it, or identifying what the potential challenges and barriers are. So for me, that skill has been incredibly valuable, I think, in anything I do, because one of those important skills, as you probably know, right, is problem solving.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, and we're here today. We're going to talk about some fascinating research that you've done. I want to say thank you for doing the research, because I enjoyed consuming it and having a look at it. And I'm curious, when you were working through this piece of research, which is speaking directly to what people are looking for in their work, what were the biggest surprises to you in the outcomes? We're going to unpack it in a little bit more detail, but out of the gate, what were the biggest surprises for you?
Well, I think what's important to get grounded in, when I started this, the goal was to provide insight on, how workers are feeling about work and life, and track how they're progressing right now, and give context for why they were feeling this way. And the definition that we have for a worker is really broad, and that's full-time, part-time, a freelancer, or an owner of a business. And the reason being is that if you think about the talent pool and how it's evolving, not everybody is going to be a full-time worker in the future. And so talent is just great talent, great people that have different work statuses. And so I wanted to make sure that we could look at the whole set of amazing people that really are part of the workforce. So I'd say the research was more about confirming things that I had seen in a lot of qualitative work, which had all culminated into the book. But really some key things that meaning matters, not just money, right? I think the pivots that so many people have made during this great resignation, that was what was important to just confirm, right? For us, we saw, earning steady income, while it was a top goal, the next two was doing meaningful work and working in a field that you're passionate about. Purpose. A lot of stuff about purpose, right? But purpose really does power progress. Getting the most out of life and purpose was really strongly correlated with career progress. And this other piece, our identity isn't just tied to a job. People's professional ambition isn't tied to being part of a company, where it definitely was, a decade ago.
So you see a distinct shift in that. I was curious, if you were talking about this study over coffee with a friend, and just saying, hey, I was surprised that this came up, or this was a really interesting finding. Which ones would rise for you?
I think one, I would say it's more confirmatory, but I think it's an aha for people that what it takes to be successful. And that's one of the big questions people wanted to answer. Planning. This dimension of planning, specifically having a career plan, like defining what it is that you want, having that goal and the pathway to get there, and the people to help you. I mean, that's a big piece of that. And so all this is part of that foundational research, which then led to, again, the piece that you read, which is about these segments, because we also wanted to understand, all right, well, this is all of this information for that whole population, but how does that break up into the different groupings? Because not everybody is going to be thinking, right, the same way or feeling the same way. And so we wanted to understand what are these groups based on their attitudes, based on their mindsets. And from that perspective, what's surprising is probably like how big one particular group is, and didn't even think they would be that large, and how successful they'd be feeling.
Yeah, well, and yeah, thanks for setting the stage for that, because we're going to talk about those groups right now, and that was one of the most fascinating pieces of it. And one of the outcomes of this research is that you've got 6 groups that 6 cohorts that you've identified, and we're going to talk about each one of them in depth. But I'm going to give a highlight of them now, and then we'll spend some time talking about them. So the entrepreneurial planners is one group that you investigated. Successful, forward-thinking workers who strive to get the most out of their careers. Interestingly, over a third of them are in their 30s, and so it's an interesting group, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Then we talk about the career pivoters. These are people who are less satisfied workers and actively looking to make some changes and pursue a little bit more meaning. Then we've got the highly skilled and collaborative cohort that you've discovered and articulated. Can't wait to talk about them. Largely Gen X and millennials comprising this group as well, which is also interesting. Then you've got the social impact communicators, workers driven by their personal values who strive to create an impact in their work. Then you've got the flexible contributors, independent thinkers with a desire for meaningful work. And then the lost and struggling, the group that's dispirited and who feels stuck. And I know that you like to work with people who feel stuck. So this is I'm sure a group that you spend some time with. So let's talk about the entrepreneurial planners. Who are they? Tell us about them. What insights can you give us?
Well, they're one of the most diverse segments from an ethnicity standpoint. As you mentioned, half are millennial workers. So I think what's interesting, this segment kind of reflects somewhat of the demographic or the generational cohorts that we're seeing, right? So we got 4 generations in the workplace. So this is where you see a significant amount of them. They feel really successful because they are engaging in those career planning activities, which we found in our research that, again, planning is really what helps move the needle in terms of people feeling like they're making the progress that they are looking for. They're also most likely to be wanting to start, gig or creator work, right? So you hear a lot of those in that millennial cohort side hustling it, wanting to pursue like a parallel path to things. They expect their employers to prepare them for career growth, right? They want to have employers invest in them. Don't want to be constrained by formal hierarchies, right? So if they're entrepreneurial in nature, they want to start their side hustle, and having a very formal, constrained kind of environment doesn't let them be as creative and as sort of forward thinking likely. So, and they do spend quite a bit of time getting that necessary training to keep them marketable. I mean, these are the people that you want to keep. If you think about within any sort of composition of the workforce, this is a segment that they're engaged. They're quite happy. They're feeling successful. And if they're feeling successful in their work and career, that does translate into how they're feeling about their life. And that translates into actually business outcomes. Because, when you feel like it's a fit, you're not really looking to leave.
Yeah. So what would be the most important thing for us to keep in mind when it comes to keeping their attention and attracting them?
Well, I think they're always looking to be challenged and grow. I think engaging with them in developing that entrepreneurial type of mindset, challenging them constantly. So it's understanding, first and foremost, where are you trying to go? Knowing that that's okay if you might want to pursue other parallel paths, but if you can understand what that big picture is with them and see how you can take this passion and fervor and say, interesting, if you want to pursue X and potentially start your own business, what if we could give you some of those opportunities to learn and to grow and build it here? Because they likely could be that person where you could slot into a role where you're trying to establish a new function, or it's a brand new function that's being built, or trying to establish new processes. But that is something that they could easily sink their teeth into and help build along the way. But it's a skill in which they realize they can leverage outside of work. And you should look at that as a competitive thing. If anything, they're growing with you and they see there's a commitment to their development together. So you're more likely to keep them longer versus constraining them. Because as I said before, formal hierarchies, too much of a robust structure. That's not what's going to keep them there.
Yeah. So the opportunity for something new, for the creation process is important to them. So, and, either providing it internally or allowing them to exercise it externally sounds like a good plan with that group. What about the career pivoters? So, they're less satisfied and they're actively searching for a career. What can you tell us about them?
Well, they skew male. They're also quite ethically diverse, but these are the folks that tend to be in the earlier stages of their career and the company tenure is short. So I think so many of us know this type of profile while they're in, and then they don't stay too long and then they're gone because they don't feel like it is that right fit. They're just struggling where they don't enjoy the work. They feel somewhat constrained because for them as well, formal hierarchies and robust structures are quite limiting. They don't also feel this opportunity to move up in the role that they want. They don't feel like they're doing that right work for them. So, this is not uncommon. When people are just starting out, they don't always know. They certainly have that energy to want to grow and matriculate as fast as possible. They're not sure exactly what it is yet. And, they probably are looking at that burst role as this stepping stone, which we see.
Mm-hmm.
But you can have really great, ambitious young talent who are just trying to find that alignment. So in this particular case, I think it is also then working with them and saying, all right, you might not know what it is, but as a manager, you've worked for some time. How can you identify some of the talents and skills and aptitudes that they have? And how could they employ them within the company such that there is a higher order meaning to the sort of mission of the company or a social impact for that matter? But some of that where they just might not know. And so how can, again, as a leader, you help spot the trends for them too?
And I think you drew out that this group skews male. You mentioned it also skews younger. 52% of them are under the age of 30. Mm-hmm. What's important for us to know about that?
Well, again, life stage. What's so important in each of these segments is that they also reflect different life stages. And so your whole workforce isn't at the same life stage. And when you're in a certain life stage, inevitably what they want out of that particular life stage and it ties to your career stage is different. So they are still figuring it out. They are looking for that level of support and mentorship and guidance. And so if they don't feel they have it, there's also this belief of a level of optionality that they have versus other generations, because they can go out and maybe they do want to pursue independent work, maybe they don't, but they are looking, they're constantly looking because they're not sure where they exactly fit. So how can you guide them along the way? How can you be that partner with them? And I candidly will say that for all of them, if you can be that partner to the incredible talent you have in defining what is the goal that you've got, whether it's short term and potentially long term, getting grounded in that, that is a way to build a tighter relationship, because everybody wants to feel that there's a sense of commitment, investment, ultimately belonging and support. That's going to go a long way.
Yeah. No, I you definitely can see that. It's and finding ways in which that happens naturally. The space there's got to be an art form to that. I'm on a highly skilled and collaborative cohort. What stood out to you about that group?
Well, what I think is interesting is that you have this group that just is all about wanting to work together with others, right? I think that sense of community and belonging, very skilled people, but they like to work with others to have that sense of connection. And they're all about expanding this network that they have inside and outside of work. These are folks that don't necessarily find the hierarchies as limiting necessarily. What also drives them is the perks of an organization. I mean, they are drawn to that. There's nothing that's necessarily a negative. Some people prioritize that differently. But so being part of a organization, some people it fits better, some people it doesn't. But that is something that they gravitate towards. And they're always teaching themselves new skills and are willing to actually share that and want to be able to socialize that with others. And so I think these are great people who you should obviously keep just because they are constantly learning and they can bring that and want to work with others to kind of lift everyone up. And so, knowing them, there's some things where being in a larger organization isn't necessarily something that is a detractor.
Right. It seems like the filter set that would be meaningful to this group is who they get to work with. That would be conversations around who you get to work with during a recruitment process or keeping people seems like it would resonate with this group. Yeah. What about the social impact communicators?
Well, for this particular group, they tend to skew more female. They're in the later stages of their career, 62% being Gen Xers and boomers, very college educated. They've had long tenure in the company that they've worked in. And given that they are all about delivering impact, they tend to be more in nonprofit and government organizations as well. They want to make that meaningful contribution to their company. This segment too also values those benefits, such as those healthcare plans and retirement plans. I mean, it influences, where they work. So being part of a larger organization or a certain organization, just that is not a detractor either. But I think the bigger piece is that need to ensure that they are valued and that they are contributing in a very meaningful way is really just important to them.
Yeah, the stage of life where personal values are informing a lot of decisions. I'm sure it's an interesting one. Yeah,
I would say that the alignment of personal values to a company's values is becoming a kind of trait or a belief that is quite pervasive. And I will even say that in our upcoming, our new wave of research that we have, that's a question that we asked. And over about a quarter of people believe that. And so it's not necessarily age specific. I think it's really becoming something that is quite ubiquitous. Because if you feel that what you value, your core values, tied to what a company is about, then there's a sense of alignment, which keeps you moving forward. And then it shifts your mindset from looking at that job that you have as just for the paycheck.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. And I think, it's something that you kind of come to expect will happen at a later stage in life, at that midlife, second half of life, let's call it. But it is becoming more pervasive in earlier stage life, which I've noticed in the like people over the course of the 20 years that I've been in recruitment. I've seen that shift towards purpose happening earlier, happening with recent graduates. So I hear you on that. What about the flexible contributors?
This is where you find those independent workers and business owners. So not surprising, right? That you would expect that there would be a segment of this type of cohort. And it happens to skew more female than the largest cohort of boomers. But, I think you may also know this, is that there are quite a few small businesses or those who are entrepreneurs. They're not all young. Actually, quite a few, right? That are, this may be a second career for them. But, flexibility is really key in working when and where they want. And, they're doing this because there's that desire for meaningful work. The one thing that, when people pursue that independent path, though, is that they don't always have those career planning resources or a mentor or an advocate, unlike what you may have in a company. So, what could be very helpful for them is if organizations are hiring independent talent, they still have some of the same needs. All of us want to be supported in some way. So if there are opportunities to do that, because it's about having a strong bench of talent, right? And independents or business owners or vendors, what have you, who are in demand may not always be available. So, have to think of that as well.
Yeah, no, and you definitely see like people are being more upfront with what they want in their work in early stages of conversation with us, and flexibility is definitely becoming a common theme in the conversation. So let's talk about the lost and struggling, the dispirited workers.
I'm sure, we've all run into someone, whether it's a close friend or a friend of a friend, who has been feeling this way. And, how many more seasoned workers, almost half are Gen Xers, a third are in their 50s. They've been in their company for quite a long time. 19% of them have been there for 20 years. And, they're also more likely to work in large enterprise companies, but they also feel the least successful because of the fact they don't feel like they've been able to move up in the way they've wanted or hold that leadership position. They're also they don't believe they've been as valued, and they don't feel they haven't had the support to help them move into that next place that they want to be in because of whether it's a sponsor or a mentor. They just don't feel that they've been as successful as mapping out that next step. And so lost and struggling does fit, because it's not that they don't want to achieve some of those same things. I think everybody does, but in the environments that they're in, and job benefits also do influence where they work, I should say. They are trying to find that alignment. What they're doing right now isn't as meaningful to them or as interesting. It doesn't turn their passion on. So they may have stayed in a career where they know it's not the right fit, but there are other extenuating circumstances where they're like, well, I still need to stay here for various reasons. So they may not feel they're able to use their talents to its fullest potential. On the flip side, the employer may not feel the same way too, right? There's two sides of this.
Right.
So how can you meet in the middle to some degree? If they've got this depth of experience, they've been with a company, I think there should absolutely be value placed on those people who've had a certain tenure, because there is a history that can be incredibly valuable. How do you leverage that? How do you train them for this new future? Because they don't have necessarily those level of technical skills potentially that those who are younger do.
Yeah. They're kind of a revival exercise with them and helping them get some restored joy. I'm curious, did any of the cohorts resonate with you? Or do you see yourself in one of those cohorts?
The entrepreneurial planners is where I saw myself.
Entrepreneurial planners unite. I love it. That's fantastic. So what does the research mean? How does this research help, and this information, there's so many clues in it. How does it help employers? And specifically, how does it help them plan for their future?
Well, I think if you understand what these groupings are. And you have to layer that with the segments here, right? Because the demographics give you insight into who these different cohorts are. Entrepreneurial planners in particular, as you think about the future, you probably want to think about how you can establish more of them within your company. Like that might be the right fit for you. And those highly skilled and collaborative, and understand, what does my population, my workforce potentially look like, right? Based on this, like, oh my God, does it seem like a good portion of my company is lost and struggling? How do I start to plan such that, that isn't the case? How do I change that mix fundamentally? And what do I need to do around that? Because, I see this really as a marketing challenge. You also mentioned you're a market researcher. You're also a marketer. How do you look at really understanding this workforce, their wants, needs, attitudes, motivations, behaviors? Because when you are able to dive deep and create those personas, right? The better understanding you have of them, the more effective you will be at identifying whether the programs, the policies, the products, the services is aligned with what they really care about or not. Some of those measures of just maybe role, tenure, department, it doesn't show the whole person. A person's potential is very much predicated on their aptitude to, or their interest, or their aspiration. Not everyone's the same. So when I think about some of these implications, it can facilitate that intergenerational interaction, understanding, if you're like this, but we're like this, why are we disconnected? Not just because you're being difficult. It's like, we fundamentally have different attitudes and approaches. It doesn't mean that we can't find a way to bridge the gap. But if you don't have a level of understanding of each other, you're never going to do that.
That's curious. Like the understanding can build bridges between the generations, which is, there's been so much conversation around the divide within the generations,
Yes.
but this research, what I found interesting is that it's like those segments that you've created are multi-generational.
Exactly.
Common interest. Yeah.
And I think we tend to put hard and draw lines in the sand. So you're this or you're this. But, people are pretty multifaceted.
Yeah.
And multidimensional. And it gives you a guide. It's not the end all be all, but it gives you context. The intent is, how can you build a foundational understanding and context of people in a much more holistic way so that you can be better equipped to develop the right environment that's more flexible.
Yeah.
How do you help people be more successful? Because when you know what drives them, what can you put in place?
Right. When you get a better understanding of their definition of success, you can get a little bit of help designing their work life to achieve that. I'm curious, how does it help with crafting jobs?
Well, I think one of the key things is that by defining jobs in the traditional sense that it is this role with this tasks, that's not necessarily how people are looking at their career, because they're not looking at a job. Like a career is not just a job to do a task. A career means something bigger to people. And they see that their work and life are integrated. So how can you express the job where it ladders up into a higher order purpose, mission, impact, such that it helps develop them, but it also has a greater impact on really the world at large? Let's keep in mind too, the attitudes of the workforce and desires of the workforce is not just, okay, our job is to help an organization hit their numbers and hit those specific targets. It's how can we be better and do better in the world? What does that look like? How can I, in my role and the work that I'll be doing and the aptitudes that I can bring and the interests that I can bring, you're selling it. So it's like, oh, not just I have this, and this skill. It's that you have an interest, a passion, or a desire to affect change or optimize an approach to bring about a different way if you are a change agent. But for those, maybe it is looking at constructing something that's already there, but just making it better. So it's not a wholesale change of things, but you're that optimization expert or what have you, like, because that's what turns you on. Mm-hmm. But how do you pull some of that essence of the person and their personality and what just inherently drives them? That would be valuable to see, right? Because like, wow, this feels like me. This feels like I can really contribute. People want to contribute. They don't want to just do a task.
Yeah, it's a basic motivational theory principle, the concept of making a contribution. I'm curious on like, what insights does your research offer those tasked with recruiting and attracting talent? How can it serve them?
What, to me, this gets back to and understand who your audience is. And when it comes to what are the goals that they are looking for, not just in work, but in their life. So we have 2 other reports that kind of provide the broader context, but know that work and life are integrated. They believe that, they see that. So if the role that they are taking on with you aligns to a bigger aspect of what they believe is important to their life, and people are starting to ask that now too. They want, there's a shift in terms of, wanting work to fit into their life, not the other way around, which is what I do. I grew up with it is I find the right job and my life will be sort of defined by that job. Well, now it's, what is the life that I want to lead? Why is that the life I want to lead? And then how does the role or the opportunity align to that? How does it fit? Because when those all come together, that's when you know you're going to be performing at your best. And this is why it's important to know, because people today don't want to necessarily conform and be in a very rigid, siloed, linear, sequential structure.
True. Yeah.
They want to be their whole self. They want to reflect their breadth of talents. Mm-hmm. We can all agree that we're not one-dimensional, right? Mm-hmm. But in many roles in the past, or the way things were structured, is about breadth, specialization. Mm.
Yeah.
Specialization, very important, but with everything changing so quickly, skill development, right? New skills. It's all about, you see this out there. It's all about skills, But I'm like, well, which skills? Mm-hmm. Not everybody has those skills. So aptitude is key, right? So how do you get to aptitude? Well, aptitude is not just doing this stuff. It's having an interest and a desire and an aspiration to do it. So you have to marry those 2 together. So when you're trying to find someone as a recruiter, or somebody, from a talent perspective, it's getting to know the whole person and a bit of their psychology, what turns them on. Not just, we have this wonderful company, of course you want to work here. It's not necessarily the case anymore.
Yeah, and I like this concept of aptitudes, because recruitment for so long, and the conversation around recruitment has been built about competency, which is, a skill done over and over again. But the concept of aptitudes is starting to be more part of the conversation and opening up possibilities on that front as well. So let's get you to put your work futurist hat on, and I'd love to hear, what do you feel is one of the most important learnings we can take from the past in and around this type of work that you're doing to create a better future?
I see simply it's people power businesses. We're the business of people. And while technology will continue to proliferate and to help us manage and implement all kinds of activities in our work and life, everybody's thinking about how to use ChatGPT for whatever aspect, right? But at the end of this, there's still a human being with emotion behind it. They're still the one who makes decisions at the end of the day, or they're still the ones who are involved in operating a business and helping a business move forward. And I think that, with so much focus that we've had on the technology, having also worked in technology for most of my career too, we've forgotten the people side.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, people are not always rational. We're emotional.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see one of those key skills that come up, right? The emotional intelligence, communication, and it's going to be even more and more important.
Yeah.
Because we're still dealing with people.
Yeah. The human skills, which have traditionally been referred to as the soft skills, are really the skills required for today. I love that. I love this work that you're doing. And, we're closing up our time together here. So if you had one piece of advice to share with employers around shape shifting, course correcting to prepare for a better future, what would that advice be?
The future is fluid and it's not fixed. So embrace a culture of continuously testing, learning, and iterating, really to find that fit, because also realize there is no failure. You're learning from trial and error. Everything is changing so fast. But I like to say change is constant and uncertainty is the new certainty. So
uncertainty is the new certainty. Yeah.
If you accept that, and it is hard though, because we as human beings don't like change. But if we know there's always going to be change, how do you get more comfortable with taking those small steps and just trying? And I think when you can do that and you bring everybody along, it's like, okay, we're all trying together. We don't have the answer yet.
Yeah.
People feel safer, right? There's a psychological safety that happens versus it has to be right from the get-go.
Right. We can figure it out.
We can figure it out together.
Yeah. Anything you wish I asked you and haven't?
No, I would just leave it as, just understand that people are redefining what success is. And so getting to the why behind the what, as we talked about, is so important for you as an organization to create that forward movement together with your people. Because if you understand how they're defining success, what is a successful outcome for them? And you're aligning with what's a successful outcome with your organization, you're going to get to a happier place versus assuming that everybody has the same definition of what success is.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Hey, Connie, thank you. Thank you on so many levels. Thank you for taking time with us today. Thank you for doing this important work that you're doing and for opening up the conversations. I'm sure for all the people that you're working with in helping them discover their, purpose and attach more to a direction that they are feeling inspired by. I say thank you for doing this work because you didn't have to, and you are, and it's really appreciated. Thanks for investing time today.
Thank you so much for having me.